Imagine this. You're staring at your phone, waiting, checking, hoping. That tiny surge of adrenaline every time a notification pops up, only to feel the crushing disappointment when it's not from him. You know that feeling, don't you? It's like an invisible chain around your mind, pulling you into a loop of uncertainty, self-doubt, and frustration. And the worst part, he doesn't even realize the power he has over you. Or maybe he does, and he thrives on it. But here's the truth. No one can have power over you unless you allow it. Let's break this down. When you're waiting for someone's response, when you're checking to see if they've read your message, when you're overanalyzing why they didn't call back, you're handing them control. You're saying, my emotions are dependent on your actions. My peace of mind is in your hands. And that, my friend, is the fastest way to lose yourself. Because power isn't about who cares less. It's about who controls the frame of the interaction. And when you're chasing, when you're overinvesting, when you're giving and getting little in return, you're stuck in a reactive position. You're responding to their rhythm instead of setting your own. Now let's flip the script. What happens when you stop? What happens when you remove yourself from the equation? Suddenly the dynamic shifts. Suddenly the power they didn't even know they had starts to slip through their fingers. Because you're no longer playing their game, you're creating your own. When you take back control, everything changes. First, you reclaim your emotional energy. Every thought, every worry, every ounce of frustration that you used to pour into them now belongs to you. You stop wasting your mental real estate on someone who wasn't even thinking about you that deeply in the first place. Instead, you reinvest that energy into yourself, your goals, your growth, your happiness. Second, you disrupt their expectations. They were used to you always being available. They were used to you being the one to initiate, to reach out, to keep things going. The moment you ghost them, they feel that absence like a void. People don't appreciate what's always there. They appreciate what they fear they might lose. And let's be real. Humans crave what they can't have. When you step back, when you become scarce, you become valuable. That's just how psychology works. It's not about playing games. It's about understanding human nature and refusing to be someone's backup plan. Third, you stop living in fear of losing them, because the real fear, the one that's been controlling you, isn't about them. It's about what their absence might mean about you. That maybe you weren't enough. That maybe you didn't do something right. That maybe if you had just tried harder, they would have stayed. But that's a lie. The truth is, if someone values you, they won't put you in a position where you have to question your worth. They won't make you feel like an option. They won't breadcrumb you with just enough attention to keep you hooked, but never enough to make you feel truly secure. And that's why ghosting isn't about them, it's about you choosing yourself. Think about it. The moment you decide to step away, to disengage, to walk away without a dramatic explanation, you send a message louder than words. I don't need to prove my worth to you. Either you recognize it or you don't deserve me. That's power. That's control. That's the shift that changes everything. Now, I won't lie to you. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. It will feel like you're losing. Your mind will try to convince you to reach out, to just check in, to see if maybe they didn't text back because they're busy. But let me tell you something. Busy is an excuse. Interest always makes time. So sit with the discomfort. Let it pass through you without acting on it. Because on the other side of that discomfort is a breakthrough. And then something incredible happens. You wake up one day and realize you haven't thought about them in hours, then in days, then in weeks. The attachment that once had a chokehold on you, gone. The anxiety replaced by peace. The power they once had, completely back in your hands. And that's when you'll see it clearly. It was never about them. It was always about you remembering who the hell you are. Let's get something straight. People don't chase what's always available. They don't crave what they can easily have. They don't put effort into something they don't fear losing. Think about it. The brands that sell out instantly, the luxury cars with weightless, The VIP sections that only a few can access, they all have one thing in common: scarcity. The moment something becomes exclusive, the moment it becomes harder to attain, its value skyrockets. And yet, when it comes to relationships, so many people do the opposite. They make themselves overly available. They overgive, overinvest, overexplain, thinking that the more they show up, the more the other person will appreciate them. But what happens? They get taken for granted. Because when someone knows they have unlimited access to you, they don't feel the urgency to appreciate or prioritize you. Now let's look at the psychology behind this. Human nature is wired to assign value based on effort and availability. If something is easily accessible, we subconsciously assume it must not be that valuable. If it requires effort to attain, if it feels exclusive, we immediately perceive it as more desirable. Take a moment and ask yourself, how have you been showing up? Have you been the person who always answers immediately? The one who never says no? The one who's available at their convenience? Because if you have, you've unknowingly taught them that you require no real effort, that you're always there, that they can reach out on their terms, disappear when they feel like it, and you'll still be waiting. And that's why ghosting, removing yourself completely, is such a powerful move. Because the second you pull back, the second you stop being the predictable, available option, the dynamic changes. They start to wonder, where did they go? Why aren't they texting me? Did I lose them? See, people assume they have time. They assume they can keep you around while they explore other options, while they decide what they want, while they prioritize everything else over you. But the moment they realize you're no longer in their orbit, they feel it. That's when the shift happens. And I want you to really understand this. It's not about playing games. It's about enforcing a standard. Because let's be honest, if someone only realizes your value after you disappear, what does that tell you? It tells you that they were comfortable not appreciating you while they had you. It tells you that they took your presence for granted because they thought they could. This is why scarcity is so powerful. When you ghost them, you force them to confront your absence. You force them to feel what it's like to no longer have you as a constant. And that's when they start to panic. They'll check their phone, expecting your name to pop up like it always does. They'll scroll through their notifications, looking for that reassurance that you're still there, still waiting, still available. And when they don't see it, it creates a void that only you used to fill. And that void, it's uncomfortable, it makes them question, it makes them wonder, it makes them realize that the access they once had to you was a privilege, not a right. And that's when their behavior shifts. Some will start reaching out. Suddenly they have time. Suddenly they're interested. Suddenly they remember how amazing you are. But understand this, they're not reaching out because they had some deep revelation about your worth. They're reaching out because they lost control over you. And for the ones who don't reach out, that's your answer. If your absence doesn't shake them, then your presence never really mattered to them in the first place. This is why you must stop making yourself an option for people who treat you like a backup plan. The person who truly values you will recognize your worth while you're there, not just when you're gone. The right person won't need to lose you to understand what they have. And here's the best part. When you embrace scarcity, when you stop giving unlimited access to people who haven't earned it, you start attracting those who truly see your value without needing a wake-up call. Most people think power comes from confrontation, that if someone disrespects them, ignores them, or plays games, the best response is to call them out, demand an explanation, or seek closure. But real power is in silence, because silence does what words can't. It forces people to sit with their own actions. It creates discomfort. It makes them wonder. And in that wondering, they feel the weight of their choices in a way that no argument, no long-winded text, no emotional plea ever could. Think about it. When you argue, when you demand answers, when you try to make someone see your worth by explaining it to them, what happens? You're giving them exactly what they expect, your energy. And that energy tells them you still care, that they still have access to you, that no matter how they've treated you, you're still engaging. But when you go silent, when you remove yourself completely, that's when the real impact hits. They expect you to react. They expect a message, a response, an attempt to fix things. When that doesn't come, they start to question. Did I lose them? Are they really done? Silence is unsettling. It disrupts patterns. It breaks the cycle. And that's why it's so powerful. Now, let's break this down deeper. Why does silence work so effectively? First, it forces them to reflect. When you're constantly engaging with someone, you're giving them an easy way out. If they hurt you, they can justify it to themselves because you're still talking to them. If they neglected you, they can assume it wasn't that bad because you're still around. Your presence, even in conflict, reassures them. But when you go silent, when you ghost them completely, they have to sit with themselves, with their choices, with the realization that you are no longer there. Second, it shifts the power dynamic. When you're the one always reaching out, always initiating, always trying to keep the connection alive, you are giving them control. You are reinforcing the idea that they can do the bare minimum and still have access to you. Silence flips that. It says, I'm no longer playing this game. And suddenly, they're the ones feeling the loss, the absence, the unanswered messages, the space you used to occupy in their life, now empty. Third, silence triggers curiosity and fear. People don't think about what's predictable. They don't wonder about what's constant, but take something away, suddenly it's all they can think about. Your silence makes them wonder. Why aren't they reaching out? Have they moved on? Did they find someone else? Were they never as attached as I thought? And the moment those questions start, you've won. Because now they're the ones stuck in their head. They're the ones feeling the unease, the uncertainty, the discomfort that you once felt. And that discomfort, it creates urgency. If they care at all, they'll act. They'll reach out. They'll try to reestablish contact. And if they don't, that's your answer. But here's the key. You don't break the silence first. Because the second you do, the power shifts back to them. The second you explain yourself, justify your silence, or respond emotionally, you undo everything. This is not about punishing them. This is about setting a standard, about refusing to engage in dynamics where you are undervalued, about making it clear that you will not argue for your worth. And if someone needs silence to realize what they had, that speaks volumes. There's a moment in every situation where the power shifts, where the person who was once seeking, waiting, and hoping becomes the one in control. That moment happens when you stop operating from desperation and step into dominance. Let's be honest. When you're chasing someone constantly checking your phone, overanalyzing their messages, or trying to figure out what they're thinking, you're in a state of lack. You're operating as if you need something from them, as if their response, their validation, their attention holds the key to your happiness. And what does that do? It makes you weak. Not because you're not valuable, not because you're not worthy, but because you're putting them in the position of power. You're saying, your attention determines my worth. Your actions dictate how I feel. But the second you remove yourself from that equation, the second you decide, I'm done waiting, I'm done chasing, I'm done giving energy to someone who isn't matching it, everything changes. Because now, instead of acting from a place of need, you're operating from a place of certainty. This is what dominance looks like. It's not about control over others. It's about control over yourself. It's about saying, I refuse to beg for what should be freely given. Now, let's break this shift down. Step one, releasing the attachment. Most people stay stuck in unhealthy dynamics because they're attached to the outcome. They're attached to the idea of how they want things to be. They create a version of the person in their head, one that doesn't actually exist. They ignore the reality that this person isn't showing up for them, that they're only putting in minimal effort, that they're keeping them around as an option, not a priority. When you let go of the attachment, you see things clearly. You stop making excuses for them. You stop convincing yourself that if you just try a little harder, they'll suddenly become the person you want them to be. And in that moment, you free yourself. Step 2, shifting the energy. When you're desperate, your energy is low value. It's reaching, it's seeking, it's waiting. And people can feel that. Even if you don't say a word, they can sense when you're overly invested, when you're craving their validation. But when you shift into dominance, your energy says something completely different. It says, I don't chase, I attract. If you want me, show me. Too valuable to entertain inconsistency. And this shift, it's magnetic because people are drawn to confidence. They are intrigued by those who don't need them, but who choose them. This is why the moment you ghost them, the moment you stop feeding them your energy, they start paying attention. They feel the shift. They sense that they no longer have control over you. And suddenly, the person who was once pulling away is now leaning in. The person who was once unsure is now noticing your absence. But the difference is you no longer care if they do. Step 3, elevating your standards. Desperation makes you accept less than you deserve. It convinces you that even scraps of attention are enough, that as long as they give you something, it's worth holding on to. Dominance says, I only engage with what aligns with my worth. It's recognizing that love, respect, and effort should be non-negotiable, that you don't have to fight for someone to see your value, that you don't have to accept half-hearted effort just to keep them around. This shift is powerful because it's permanent. Once you elevate your standards, you never go back. You never again entertain bare minimum behavior. You never again put yourself in a position where you have to convince someone to appreciate you. Step 4, watching the power shift. Here's the fascinating part. The second you step into this energy, this I'm good either way energy, the people who once took you for granted start noticing because they feel your absence. They feel your lack of concern. They feel the space you once filled, now empty. And this triggers something in them, the need to earn back what they assumed would always be there. Some will reach out, trying to get back the access they once had. Some will test the waters to see if they can still control the dynamic. And some will disappear completely, proving that they were never meant to be in your life in the first place. But by then, you won't be waiting for any of them because you'll be too busy thriving, too busy moving forward, too busy living in your power to even notice.